Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Family Ministry Podcast. I'm Nick, I'm your host, and today we have a returning guest on the podcast that I'm really excited about, and it's Sam Collier. And Sam and I talk about his new book, A Greater Story, and it's just a great conversation. It was awesome to catch up with Sam again, and as usual, you can get all the links and notes and things like that, and there is something you're going to want to check out that you can find linked in the notes, and you can find it at nickblevins.com/episode 199. Before we jump into that interview, I want to remind you that we're about 8 days from the close of registration for this brand new live 10-week course that I'm leading called The New Digital Church. We're going to learn to apply online business practices and tactics and strategies to the church in order to reach and connect more people online. Most of us are frustrated by lack of engagement, by seeing numbers decline, by not having that impact that we want to have online when we're either not meeting in person or maybe barely, meeting in person. Maybe it's a low percentage of people that are attending in-person services. So in the New Digital Church course, we're going to walk through probably over 100 ideas that we could implement, but they'll be in different categories such as our web presence and social media and ads and content and communication and all that. And then we'll apply it to specific ministries too, like to adults, students, and kids. Now that course starts with live sessions on August 6th. So registration closes the night before August 5th. Ideally, don't wait till August 5th if you want to get in. It's $97 for your whole church staff. And you would want to invite multiple staff to take the course because the concepts that we're going to talk about, they cover a broad number of areas in the church, which usually means multiple staff are responsible for those areas. So ideally, you'll get a handful of people on the course together. You'll kind of create a team. You're going to work through this together, apply it to your church together and all that. You can learn more about that at nickblevins.com/new digital church. I mentioned earlier, there's something in the show notes that you're going to want to link to, and that is A Greater Story Live that is going to be happening on Tuesday night, August 4th. And so Sam's going to talk about that more in this interview. Again, I'm excited to bring this to you. Just love Sam and his heart and his story, and that's what this book is all about. So let's jump into this conversation with Sam Collier. Well, it's great to have Sam Collier back on the podcast. Welcome back, Sam.
Bro, so good to be here. You're a legend in this family ministry world. And so it's an honor.
You're too kind.
For sure, bro. It's an honor to be here.
That's awesome. Well, I don't know how long it's been since you were on the podcast last, but I wonder if you can kind of give us a little bit of an update about, what's it been like the last 2 years, what you've been up to. Obviously, the last number of months have been a little crazy, but what's going on with you?
Man, I really can't think beyond COVID-19. It's like,
sure, I
had life going on, and maybe this is a lot of people's experience, and then boom, everything shifts overnight, and you change your plans, you're readjusting, you're building random video studios in your house so that you could try to shift with the change and with the current, man. And so it's been wild, man.
Yeah. And last time you were on, we talked about your book, Find Your Voice. And this time we're going to talk about your new book, A Greater Story. So I'm really excited to hear about that and personally, like what that means for you. But before we started recording, we were talking about how, as you're a speaker, that's a lot of what you do. And man, if that's not one of the big things that got shut down during COVID, and that's like we were saying, it's kind of starting up again. But what you said about building a studio in your house and things like that. I'm just curious before we talk about the book, what are some ways that you've adapted, and is it, how's that working? How's that going?
Man, yeah, I always say people can respond two ways to change. They can manage the challenges or they can try to find some opportunities. And I think for me, I spent some time obviously managing the challenge, but I probably spent more time trying to find opportunities. I think it was maybe a week into it, or maybe a week and a half. I said, wait a minute, things are changing really fast. And, for me, I'm an entrepreneur. So my brain is always on okay, wait a minute. Okay. If I am employing myself in a sense financially, and thank God for retainers with
Yeah.
different organizations, then I need to be constantly thinking about how to create even more revenue, even more this. So my brain was there a weekend. And so I just started looking for different ways to be relevant in that season. And I said, okay, Skype is going to be huge. Zoom is coming out. And I'm like, let me go buy a camera. Like, it was just
Hmm.
wild. Like from the beginning of just getting ready, there was a moment me and my wife had maybe about a month in, and I said, "Babe, I think we're gonna be here for a while. Let's go ahead and start building out a space in the house where
Hmm.
we know good lighting is, and where we know let's get a rhythm going so that we can get ready for these virtual events and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, I think we know each. I mean, you follow me. We know each other, but I'm not sure if you saw the global prayer that we
Hmm.
did maybe a couple weeks in, where, man, I just said, how can right now, what is the need of what's the greatest need of people right now? And it was hope, just kind of
Hmm.
all around the world. And so we
Yeah.
started doing these global prayers with David Crowder and Priscilla Shire and Samuel Rodriguez and Nona Jones and all these folks. And it was just wild, man. And got about 250,000 views on the first one and
Mm.
500,000 people tuning in on the second. And it was a wild time, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, it was well timed because that at that point, hope was what was needed, and like fear was so high. I mean, it just was so new, and now, I mean, gosh, it feels like 2 years since then, but it's only been 4 months or whatever. Um,
Right.
I don't know. There's like the weariness. There's a different feeling. There's fear with. I mean, we're talking now when schools are starting up, either not in person or in person, and either way, there's fears and things like that. So anyway, that was well timed, and even your book that we're going to talk about, again, well timed, faith in the midst of trials and things like that. Certainly, really, really important. But by the way, if the people for some reason don't listen to the rest of this, which would be, of course, stupid, they could just leave with manage challenge or find opportunities. I feel like that's where the church is right now. Because
Yeah.
at least, and maybe I'm projecting some of our church, but we've spent the first couple months adjusting, scrambling. Okay, how do we do this? Finances, where are we? How do we get whatever we need online? And then there was a couple months of like, okay, we're in that rhythm. How do we do some of the normal things that we do to help people grow their faith, but online? And now it feels like if your church really wants to reach and make disciples, you got to be asking that question about find your opportunities, not manage challenges. So that's gold. That's gold. Thank you for that.
Wow. Yeah, bro, you have to, because if not, you'll get stuck in just managing the challenge and you'll just start going down. And
Hmm.
I have some friends that are in the speaking industry that haven't made $1 since March.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it is almost August now.
Yeah.
And they were so, there's so many individuals, they were just stuck on the old. It's like, okay, maybe we'll get out, we'll get out, we'll get out. So they were in their savings. And I know we're getting really financial, but
It's okay. Yeah, it's a
you
real
know,
life for people. Yeah.
yeah, they were like diving in their savings and they were like, oh, I got enough for this. And, everybody just thinking it's going to end earlier than it's going to end. And it just kept continuing. It felt like it was never going to stop. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, bro, you gotta pivot. You have to pivot, right? Like you have to start thinking about these opportunities and you have to just start building business models and other things so that you can respond. I'm like, even if it changes tomorrow or even if it changes in a month, at least you would have had a moment to change, to even capitalize or find a way forward right now in these unique opportunities. Because I always say, I was, there. What's wild about this season is that you have some of the lowest of lows that you'll ever face,
Mm-hmm.
but then you also have individuals experiencing some of the highest of highs. And, Zoom stock went through the roof, a month
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
COVID-19. Netflix went through the roof. Skype went through the roof. I mean, these are on churches that were postured for online. Their giving went way up because now they were ready and
Yeah.
they were the only like game in town in a sense. And so It's wild, bro. The ones that pivot, the ones that innovate are the ones that win in this season. But that's how America always is, right? I mean, things shift, things change, and the ones that move with the change, while managing the challenge, they win, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to like name the examples, I don't think, but I've multiple times seen how many people reference companies now. They're just known massive companies with huge influence and lots of income, obviously, but they were born out of the 2007, 2008 kind of recession. And you don't remember that, because it's 12 years ago. But a lot, even social media, some of those,
Right.
that's when they really were born. And it was in the time when like you would think, no, nothing new is going to work now, or, don't, fear could tell you to just hold on. And that could be churches. That's why I think that your find your opportunities thing is great, because churches could do that, right?
100%. 100%, bro. Finding the opportunities. Anyway, I'll get off this, but
that's okay. I like talking about it too, but I do want to talk about your book, and I'd love to just start asking what inspired you to write the book.
Man, it's interesting. People keep saying to me, seems like you wrote this book for this time. And I'm like, no, I was just writing about how to manage, the chaos that you find yourself in life. I was just, I wrote it with the idea that God is in the business of turning a mess into a miracle, and that he can bring order to the chaos that we find ourselves in, because he did it in my life. And, that's been my message for a long time. It's the whole idea of a greater story, that when your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story, which is my mantra. But, underneath that is this meta narrative that the greater story is God's unique way of, one, getting us into purpose, but also leveraging our pain for purpose, and also working through the mess of our life to turn it into a miracle. And so that's what the book is about, bro. It gives people a strategy through the power of the story of my own life and the story of many things that I went through. And then obviously some preaching and the story of the scripture. It takes them into a picture of how God can actually do that with their life.
Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your story, that finds its way in the book, but is, the reason for this early on. Tell us a little bit about some key things, some key moments in your life, and how faith was a part of that. I'd love to hear that.
Bro. I mean, the whole, I guess, hook of the story, if you will, is I met my biological family for the first time after 25 years on the Steve Harvey Show. And it was wild. It was a wild story. A little bit of the backstory around that was my mother was 21 when she had my sister and me, my twin, and she had 3 kids already. Extreme poverty, dad addicted to drugs, and, she gave us up for adoption, and we were, written off by the adoption agency that we probably wouldn't be much. They told my parents that came and adopted us 2 months later after we had been given up for adoption that they probably shouldn't adopt us because, we'll probably be mentally challenged and all types of things. And long story short, they adopted us anyway, obviously, and my sister became an industrial engineer, dual scholarship to Spelman and Georgia Tech. And, I'm on the Nick Blevins podcast.
Well, that's the low. That's another low point. But there's other high points.
For sure. Like, and I went on to do what I'm doing in ministry and television and radio and speaking and all of that, man. But God took our mess and created a miracle out of it, bro. And kind of fast forward to, the Steve Harvey moment. He already rewritten our story, right? By allowing for us to overcome the odds. But then, I guess God said, well, that's not enough. Let me put a bow on this. And he randomly told my dad one day, I think he pushed him, and I say he pushed him because that's what my dad says, right? He said, I was watching the Steve Harvey show one day in the barbershop, and God told me that Steve Harvey was going to help you find your parents. And I said, you've lost your mind, right? I mean, what are you talking about? And I found out he convinced my sister to write in, and my dad said, it's time for you guys to do this. And a year goes by and they call us, and we never thought they would call us. That's why my sister wrote in, because she didn't want to do it in the first place. They call us a year after that and say, there's about 100 stories on our desk. Yours is the top on the desk. We think we can help you find your biological family. Do you want to do it? Obviously, my sister didn't, but she said, I feel like we need to. And so we went up there to Chicago. And when we got to Chicago, they said they didn't find anyone, but they wanted to bring us on the show to make a plea. And they brought us on the show. Steve did his thing. And then we went to commercial break, and we were getting ready to make the plea. We came back after the commercial break, and Steve said, just kidding. Your mother's here. Eleanor, come on out. And God puts a bow on this story, man. And so it was a miracle. And so that's my message, man. It's like God is still in the miracle business. God still is writing and rewriting stories and rescuing us from the chaos and moving when we connect our story to his. In other words, when we let him in, he does incredible things. I grew up in a Christian home. We didn't have everything that we wanted. We had everything we needed. It was middle class. But my dad and my mom did everything they could to try to follow Christ. And I gave my life back to Christ when I was 16. And God just, we talk about this idea of how did faith play into this. I think at every turn, one, it was faith that told my dad that we needed to reach out anyway. But at every turn, I think, man, we've tried to lean on God, man. And I think the fact that we've been writing this book and that I'm on this show is a testament to faith, man. It's okay, God, I think you want to tell this story. I think that you may have something for us, because I never planned to tell this story. This wasn't in my plan, right? I mean, I was going to maybe do some books one day and do some other things. And God just stopped me on my track and said, hey, no, there's something to this story. I'm doing this. Would you lean into it? And so I changed all of my plans, and I said, okay, what does it look like for me to connect my story to his story in this season in light of everything that has happened that is miraculous? And what does it look like to tell this story? And man, we've been seeing the story bless so many people and bring so much hope, especially in the midst of COVID-19, when people are wondering, God, where are you? I think we're able to let people know that no matter what the situation is, no matter what the challenge is, God will bring the opportunity, and God will redeem whatever you're going through.
I want to ask you a personal question about that whole experience, because people can Google, look for you on the Steve, you and your sister on the Steve Harvey show. But like, what was that like in that moment? Especially they hit you with it like it's a surprise, and even after that, and faith in the midst of that. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't even imagine all the things that are going through your head and leading up to it, after it. I mean, there's disappointment because you thought it wasn't happening, and then it does. And like, sometimes we hold on to, this season's a good example, like what we want reality to be, and then it doesn't turn out. And I'm just curious of what it was like for you personally, emotionally, in that season right there.
Yeah, man. And we're speaking in reference to when I reunited with my biological mother. Am I right?
Yeah. And on the show, and that's why I know there had to be a whole lot that day, right?
Yeah.
Just the emotional ups and downs, especially since they didn't, tell you exactly what was happening. But then even after, I'm sure.
100%. After Steve brought our mother out, he said, your siblings are here too. And they come out. And we didn't even know we had brothers and sisters, same mother, same father. And so, man, it was a process of learning about your two other families. It's like, sure. Overnight, you go from two families to four families, because you have your mom's side, your dad's side. Now you got your mom's side, your dad's side, and so it's it was a process of how do we work this stuff out in us? And how does this thing happen? Where does this fit into my life and into my soul and to, all of these other things? And it was tough, man. Because you didn't want to dishonor the ones that took care of you, but at the same time, and this is just, I responded this way. You want to try to show love and grace to your biological family. But at the same time, it's like, but you can't have the mom space because my adoptive mom already that's my mom. She already has the mom space. So it was a process, man, of figuring out how to manage everyone and honor everyone at the same time.
And that's a humble perspective. I mean, even that tells me that you were in a pretty good spot emotionally in your, like, the way you saw it. The fact that you were thinking about showing them grace, your biological parents, tells me that you were in a pretty good spot. I mean, obviously, I don't know. You tell me, to handle that. Because it seems like you're asking a question like, how do I love everybody here? As opposed to all of us at different seasons of life. That's not the question we're asking in a moment. Even though we're not thinking it through, we're thinking, how's this affect me? And what's this going to do to me? It seems like you were thinking of others.
Yeah, I think for me, and I can't speak for how everyone would respond, but God did a work in our lives before that. And he, for all intensive purposes, well, I'll just say it this way. He rewrote our story. And I was so grateful. I'm like, there's nothing I can lose. There was a moment backstage where, my sister kind of has this moment and, where she's going, what if this goes sideways, right? Like, what if we walk out here, sure. And they come out and then they don't want to see us. And, like she's just, and the counselor had a moment with both of us and told us, whatever you came in here with, backstage Steve Harvey show, whatever you came in here with, you're going to leave with. So you came in accepted, you came in loved, you came in blessed, right? You're not going to leave. You're going to leave with that, right? I mean,
you're not let it change you. Yeah, not let it change you. Because that's yeah.
So for me, it was like, what do I have? I don't have anything to lose by embracing them. I don't need, and here's the other one. I don't need anything from them because God had already done such a great work. So now I just get the opportunity of showing them love like I would show anyone else. So I think that's, it was coming from a place of gratitude. When I was writing the book, we went back and forth, me and the team, just around the outline. Like, I was like, oh, maybe we should have this. We should do this. And at one time, I was outlining the seasons of my life, and it started with abandonment and went to acceptance and went to this and went to that and went to that. And the last season was gratitude. And that's the season I'm in now. I'm in the season of gratitude, of just grateful to God for what he's done, man.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's a good way to say, because as you described that moment, I thought, and I was saying the same, like you were in a good place. Well, having that heart of gratitude definitely matches, So I imagine a lot of people listening, there's so many things that they're dealing with right now in the midst of this season with COVID and how it's changed everybody's lives, and who knows who we know personally who has suffered. And then you've got most listeners of this podcast lead in children's ministry or student ministry or next gen in churches. So they're figuring that out. I mean, some of them are meeting in person and trying to figure out the digital thing, and now they feel like they have two jobs. What would you say to them? Like, what do you hope they get out of the book as it relates to their faith and their story and hope and all of that?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing is that there's a greater story for all of us. There is something greater for us that God has for us in whatever season that we're in. If I always give the example of the passage of scripture when Jesus is in the boat with the disciples and a storm breaks out, Jesus goes to sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And for many of us, that's where we find ourselves. We're in the boat with Jesus and a storm has broken out. And we're going, what has happened? Right. And in that moment, we have two choices. We have the same two choices that the disciples had. And it's, do we freak out and go crazy and scream? Or do we have faith? Obviously, the disciples freak out and right, they go crazy, they scream, and they wake Jesus up. And what does he say? He doesn't say, "Are you okay?" That's interesting to me that he doesn't respond from a nurturing place, right?
Sure.
He says, "Where's your faith?" He says, "Where's your faith?" And then the text says he calms the storm, right? That passage for me is huge because it communicates to all of us that Jesus was not worried whether or not we were going to be okay, because he knew we were going to be okay because we were in the boat with the Messiah. And so I think for all of us in this season, especially as we look at my story, but even as we just surrender to this season, it's understanding and knowing that the Messiah is in the boat with us every day, especially in COVID-19, right? He shines when things are crazy. We have the creator of the world, of the elements, with us every single day. And if he created this world, he can bend it, he can maneuver. Now, he's going to do it based on his timing, and he's going to do it the way he wants to do it. And he's going to do it according to his plan and to his will. But if we understand the scripture and if we connect the dots, we notice that the passage says that he will work everything out for our good. He will provide for us. He will be with us, and he will calm the storm. And here's the great thing. If he doesn't calm the storm, he always gives us the strength to make it through. So what am I saying? The idea of us making it through the storm and the idea of him calming the storm is all a part of the greater story that he has for us. But the only way that we get it is if we let him in, if we surrender to him every day. And if we do what Jesus was asking the disciples to do, have faith. Where's your faith? Where's your faith? Have faith during this season and know that the creator of the world is in the boat with you. And if he's with you, you'll be okay.
Well, Sam, man, I could have you talk about that for like 2 hours. But of course, people are going to get to hear more about this because they're going to get the book, I hope. So tell us how to get the book and tell us about A Greater Story Live.
For sure. Get the book right now on Amazon. I know when this is coming out, we're a week out from release. Oh my gosh. Right.
Yep.
It'll be like a week until the book comes out. So pre-order it right now. And you'll get some free stuff. So we're giving people that pre-order the audio book for free. And we're also giving them the workbook for free, the manual, which you cannot get for free if you order the day of. We're a week out, so it's going to be at your door in a week. Go ahead and get the freebies. We have a brand new song with The Truth, 2-time Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist that he wrote about my story. It's called A Greater Story. You can actually stream it on Spotify, but we'll also send you the song for free with the pre-order. So go to agreaterstory.org. agreaterstory.org and pre-order the book. And that's where you kind of redeem all of the free stuff and so on and so forth. Also, we do have a Disney giveaway that is happening between now and the week of. We're awarding the winner. We're giving away 2 free passes, 2 free year-around passes, season passes to Disney, one of the greatest storytellers of all time, right?
Oh, yeah.
In connection to A Greater Story. So go there. You can find it on my Instagram. You can find just go on Instagram, scroll down a little bit, Sam Collier, and you'll see the free Disney giveaway. It's also on my Facebook. And you have a chance to win over the next week. So go do all of that. Download the book, get it, so on and so forth. Get the freebies and be inspired. A Greater Story Live is also happening on August 4th, the day that the book comes out at 8 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern. Speakers like Andy Stanley and Matthew Stevenson and Annie Downs and Matt Maher and, so many of these faith leaders. Lecrae will be in the building. So many of these faith leaders, some of the greatest Christian leaders in our world today. I've had an opportunity to interview them over the last 3 years, and we're all coming together with a mashup of some of the greatest moments from some of my biggest interviews that'll take place on Lightworkers official on Facebook. But you can just go to agreaterstorylive.com, agreaterstorylive.com, and you can catch it there. So, bro, big release week.
Well, congratulations, man. I'm pre-ordered. I'm going to check that out too. So congrats, man. I know that's a big accomplishment. This is the second book for you, so it's another big accomplishment. But I'm mostly grateful for you, your story that you just help impact so many lives, letting God speak through you to, being a greater story. So I appreciate that, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Congrats on the book. I hope it changes a bunch of lives.
Thank you, bro. You the man.
I love seeing what Sam's doing. And man, that guy he's just something else. He's just a great story, and loved hearing that more in this interview and in the book. And what he's doing, the people that he's connected with, A Greater Story Live, a chance to hear some of the highlights from some of those interviews. And you go look and see who the voices are, and you're just amazed that he's been able to have conversations with all of those people. And so A Greater Story Live is going to be a great chance to check that out. That's August 4th. That's one of the action items I think of coming out of this interview, is to attend and watch A Greater Story Live. Obviously, another one is to get the book. Go ahead and get the book. Pre-order it if you're going to get it, because that helps out Sam as an author for sure. Pre-orders make a big difference. So order that. And then the other thing is that thing that I didn't let him gloss past because it was too good. And that's don't manage the challenge. Find opportunities. What is one opportunity you can find this week that is stemming from some kind of challenge, which there's more than enough right now, right? What's one opportunity you can find this week to act on instead of, and so we're going to stop and not manage the challenge. I think that would be a great action step to take this week. You can get all the links and things we talked about at nickblevins.com/episode 199. The new digital church course starts in 9 days when this podcast comes out, maybe sooner, maybe it already happened, depending on when you're listening to it. It will still be available on demand, but this is the only chance to take it live and be part of the live Q&A and all of that. And we already have a number of churches on board. So check out nickblevins.com/new digital church, and you can sign up and register. I hope you'll be in there. I really look forward to working with all these churches and kind of all of us taking this journey together to reach and connect more people online. In relation to reaching people online and digital church and all that, next week we're going to re-air a conversation that Allie Evans and I are going to have about thinking digital first. So you don't want to miss that either. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Our church, all of our churches, I think, need to think digital, if not first, evenly, right, with in-person going forward. So that's going to be a fun conversation. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss it. If you could leave a comment and a review, and a rating wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts or, wherever that might be, that would be great. I really appreciate that. It certainly helps. So thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.